How do you think about how data allows you to serve the customer better and at the same time make sure that you respect privacy and other things that consumers are concerned about?
Oh, it's a great question. Data is going to be the linchpin to making this work. Because as you think about having a large distribution company, we have 170 million direct-to-consumer relationships. These are consumers that are giving us permission, the appropriate permission, to use their information. What are they viewing? Where are they when they are viewing content? On what device are they watching content? Even what room are they watching content? You can begin to then tailor not only what type of content you would want to deliver to them, but you can also tailor advertising to be hyper-targeted, very targeted to them. Never to an individual, to audiences. So we use the data to identify audiences of common interest and common likes. Our advertisers love this, and our customers like it because they're no longer seeing ads that aren't relevant to them. My wife will no longer see a Ford F-150 commercial, even though she likes football. She will see commercials and ads that are relevant to her. So data is critical to making all of this happen. Privacy. This is an area that I think is probably one of the issues of our time. Here in Silicon Valley, it's obviously a major issue. And we are strong believers that Congress needs to act here. Congress needs to act to say, what are the rules of the road? And the rules of the road ought to apply to everybody who's participating in this ecosystem. The rules of the road ought to require transparency. The rules of the road ought to make the customer in control of their data. And the rules of the road ought to say everybody's abiding by the same rules and the same principles. So we're encouraging Congress to act and pass legislation.
So let's assume you get those rules of the road set, you try to serve the customers the best. How do you get a culture of a creative institution like Time Warner to work with a network operator like AT&T when the cultures are so diametrically opposed and different, hiring different people, different backgrounds, et cetera?
Yeah, so as we were putting these two companies together and doing the planning, well, it was a long time of planning because we were going through a lawsuit, as you know. This was the issue that I thought the most about, and that is, how do you preserve the cultures of each? Because you have one, the communication company. This is a technical organization. It's an organization that is a great logistics machine. They know how to build things. We know how to sell things. We know how to sell subscription services to customers. Over here, you have a very creative organization. And every night, every single asset drives home from work.
Right.
And so how do you preserve the best of both? And we believe, and I believe, that it was very important that you kept these companies autonomous, but you established right at the very beginning, what are the values that everybody lives by? The cultures can be different and should be different. Creative culture versus a logistics technical culture. But what are the values that really guide how we behave, how we treat each other, how we treat the public, and how we treat the consumer? So we set those values, but turned everything loose. Now there are some things we have to do to bring these two together. And so we have to build the connective tissue that allows us to bring the two together but not pollute the cultures of each other. That's the art to this. And so we built some organizations and some processes to make sure that we are building these two companies to accomplish a single objective, and that is deliver great content to our customers and very easy to access distribution platforms.
Okay, so you bring these two cultures together, you're trying to deliver a better experience, and now the customers are changing about how they consume the products and services you sell. You and I are about to be in front of 100 some odd Stanford students who probably don't subscribe to cable or to DirecTV. They want to get everything over the top. What does AT&T need to do to change to make sure that you're relevant for them on a go-forward basis?
Well, you just said it. As you think about different audiences and different customer bases, they have different desires and different interests. A lot of people in my industry talk about we need to deliver skinny bundles. And I say, I don't think I've ever heard a customer say, give me less content. But the customer has said, I don't want to pay for all that content that I'm not consuming. Give me content that is relevant to me. That's where we have to become very, very good at what we do. This is where Time Warner, or now Warner Media, comes into play. Can we use the information, what we know about how our audiences are consuming content, to tailor content that is unique to various audiences and deliver that to those audiences, not bundles of 500 channels of content that only 10 or 12 will even be watched. We're going to have to get very targeted, very specific, deliver content that they find relevant, in the format they find relevant, on the devices they find relevant, and anywhere they are.
Okay, so one of the things we've seen in the industrialist dilemma from incumbents is that sometimes there's a challenge with being an incumbent, and in particular, trying to go through transformational change when you're a public company.
Right.
Some of the private companies don't have the quarterly pressures, they don't have to be reporting to Wall Street. What are the opportunities and challenges for you as a very, very large public company?
Well, you just identified it. It's how do you run these big transitions? I've always said that the more successful you are at anything you do, the more it kind of puts you in prison in terms of being able to make changes. And so think about, we used to be a big telephone company. We sold POTS, plain old telephone service, generated a lot of cash flow. Along came wireless. And the faster we invested in wireless, what did it do to the old telephone service? It cannibalized it. But you have to commit. You have to commit that this is where the customer is going, this is where the technology is going, and commit and go to it. And then you have to migrate these transitions. We've done this transition through broadband, fixed broadband to wireless broadband. We're going to see that exact same thing happen. We're watching it now from traditional streamed video over satellite and cable to over-the-top, very targeted content to our customers. We're going to have to manage that migration as well. It's hard. It's interesting. We've been around 140 years. We've managed through so many of these. I actually believe managing through these migrations is a core competency of ours. We actually do it quite well as a rule.
All right, last question for you. What do you think are going to be the attributes required of leaders at AT&T over the next decade to be successful as you go through this newest transition?
So as you think about a large company, and you asked about the cultural differences and how do you organize around cultural differences, and I said you're going to have to keep these companies somewhat independent and let them do what they do best. As we talked about, you're not going to have a single culture. What you have to have are managers who hold your values, though. Mm-hmm. So these values of transparency, these values of honesty and integrity, you start there. If you don't have that, you're not even qualified to be a participant. The other thing, this is kind of the entry, is really smart people. Mm-hmm. You have to have people who are really smart, but combined with something else. In this world, as fast as things change, being smart isn't enough. You have to have the courage to use smart. Mm-hmm. So people who have a high courage quotient, if you will, or a high quotient for risk, but managed and smart risk. Because if you're really intelligent, but you don't have the courage to kind of pull the trigger on some significant and game-changing moves, you will get left behind in this day and age. So, integrity, intelligence, courage, those are the three I'm always looking for.